With the open sky and the vast steppes in front of us, we begin our next city. As the thundering of hooves dies down, we can see the dust settle and the landscape unveil in front of us. Today's video will be all about the Talapi and how we can represent the Scythian culture with them in one of my favorite games, Sons of Six. Stick around to learn about the Scythians, the tree huggers, Talapi, and to see how horse archers can absolutely decimate your enemies. It all starts with us picking a location just north of the Black Sea, in an area called the Pontic Steppe. We pick the Talapi race as they have a boost to archery and livestock rearing, which is what led to me having the idea of associating them with the steppe cultures instead of the Celtic cultures that elves are usually associated with. We name our little settlement Tamyanka, as that was a known stronghold of the Scythians, and one of the few permanently settled locations. We name ourselves Romirus and draw what I'd like to call a horse, but I'll leave that for you to decide in the comments. But first, let's talk about today's very kind sponsor. Celestial Decks is a new collectible card game revolving around the concept of being a guide in the afterlife with various spirits who all have stories to tell. As a number spirit, you are called to the mysterious city to craft your decks and hone your skills as a storyteller as your own tale unravels before you. Use incredible combos and clever tactics to win against any opponent you come across. With both single player and PvP modes available, you can experience this wonderful blend of strategic depth and personal expression yourself by wishlisting the game on Steam. I have an affiliate link in the description, but if you use, I'll receive some kickbacks from the devs, so if you want to support the channel but not really interested in a membership, this is your opportunity to help out and support your favorite uber niche history VTuber. Additionally, the Celestial Decks developers will be hosting a card creation contest in August. Details will be in their official Discord, so be sure to join with the link down in the description. As we arrive at our location, we immediately get to work building our domiciles. I'm going to take a page from the Roman video and focus a bit more on the urban planning aspect this time around, as I felt the Sparta video was a little too focused on the military part of the game. Most of our information on the Scythians comes from Herodotus, but there has been increasing amounts of modern evidence uncovered by Russian archaeologists excavating kurgans in Kazakhstan and Central Siberia. To this end, we'll be building our first house. Now, the Scythians historically used a wagon with what's described as a yurt-like structure on top of it, and this would be definitely a boon to them with their more nomadic lifestyle. But Sons of Six lacks real nomadic mechanics, alongside also lacking the ability to make cloth structures. So we make some substitutions to our interpretation in order to make it fit well with the Talapi culture as well. We make some rectangular houses out of wood that we then round out the edges of to make them appear like wagons. I also try to place them in a way that would make sense for wagons to be placed, as our nomadic people decide to settle down for quite some time. Our immediate goal will be to secure a source of furniture in order to build a woodcutter and a hunter station, two mandatory goods we'll need for our population, and to offset any early game starvation. The large amounts of wood will also be used for building the massive pens needed to hold our livestock. Scythians historically were pastoralists and would have had large herds of livestock such as sheep, goats, and cattle in order to live off their meat and dairy. The Talapi, on the other hand, will be using onks and aurochs, our equivalent of sheep and cows, in order to sustain themselves off their own livestock, which they have boosts to production of. The Talapi boosts to livestock will also be helpful, as we'll be basing most of our domestic industries off of them. We use the leather from aurochs in order to produce armor and bowstrings, and we'll use the wool from onks, Six's equivalent of sheep, to produce clothes for citizens and soldiers. We'll also use the meat from both in order to feed the populace and make rations for the troops. Now, as a first for the channel, we'll be doing a deep dive into the material culture of the group we're learning about today. So, as we build up our clothing industry in the background, we can chat about what the actual Scythians wore and how they would have made them. Now, as with most archaeology, the knowledge we have of them is mostly through burial goods or second-hand depictions from the Greeks, Persians, or from Scythian artwork itself. And this means that it might not be representative of everyday life, but let's continue anyway. In-game, all clothes are abstracted into one resource, but historically, clothing was a massive part of culture. While it was usually utilitarian in nature, it was also a method of self-expression. To start, most of the artwork made by the Scythians was about their own warriors. So this would include armor, tunics, kaftans, and along with bracelets. Of particular note was their tall, pointed hats, also known as tigrexoda, which was also an exonym for the Scythians by the Persians. It was a significantly taller variation of the Phrygian cap that you might be familiar with, and was used for both military purposes alongside signifying tribal status. One of the other most important aspects of Scythian culture was the bow, used in everyday life for hunting alongside warfare. We've already built the Hunter's Lodge for our community, so let's put up the bow here as we talk about Scythian bows. Similar to the clothes, bows are also abstracted in-game, so while in real life there's a wide variety for an even wider variety of purposes, in-game, the longbow is effectively the same as a recurve bow. The Scythians in real life were the first actually to adopt a composite bow to mounted archery, and this was rapidly adopted by the rest of Europe and Asia. Despite being the first design, it was very overly complex and would eventually fall out of use in favor of simpler designs later on. And now, while I got all of you here, let's talk about how a composite bow works. I'm still building military assets in the background, so you really have nothing better to do than listen to me yap about super niche detailed explanations, right? As the name would imply, the composite bow is a bow made of multiple different materials in order to take advantage of each material's properties. Scythians, for example, would take advantage of horn or antlers properties under compression, whereas they would use sinew for its tensile strength. Alongside wood as a core material, this would result in a bow with a higher draw weight to length ratio, allowing them to be used more effective from horseback. Now, the Scythians, alongside their vibrant livestock industry, also had access to many fruits and vegetables from trade with the Persians and the Greeks. So I'll represent this in-game by just setting up some fruit orchards, which had the added benefit of being one of the foods the Talapi love in Sons of Six. Similar to other steppe nations and cultures I'm sure we'll explore in the future, steppe ponies have had pretty ubiquitous traits over the centuries, but I'm sure someone with a more equestrian background than me will actually me in the comments. I actually heavily encourage this. I love learning new things. The Scythians bred their horses for 3 specific traits. They needed resilience, speed, and endurance for their very nomadic life on the plains. These traits would often lead to smaller horses, hence why they're called steppe ponies, which, as an aside, growing up, I always imagined the Mongolians, the Huns, and what have you, and all the other nomadic conquerors were on these massive 14-hand war horses, like what you imagine European knights. 14 hands, 15, 16, all that. The image of them conquering the world on smaller 12-hand horses is just really funny to me. And as an aside, just because it was even funnier, I did the conversion, and I found out I would be considered 19 hands if I was a horse. Interestingly, there's also evidence that the Scythians imported a specific breed known as the Nicaean horse. From what I could research, it was a breed of war horse from central Iran, known for its impressive size, and they were used by the elites of the Persian and, later on, Byzantine armies, with it actually going extinct due to the sacking of Constantinople in 1204. What an incredible link throughout history, eh? I know I said I was going to focus more on the city building aspect of this video this time around, but we're literally playing as a nomadic culture, so how much urban planning did you really expect? Let's be honest here, okay? So instead, I'll explain our build-up to warring with our neighbors. The Scythians were not just fearsome warriors. They also conducted warfare in a way that was completely different from the other cultures we've explored so far. This can be seen during the Scythian campaign, led by Darius I of Persia. The Scythians were able to harry the Persian forces, and by using scorched earth tactics, they caused significant damage to Darius' force. This is not the save they won, however, as Darius was able to take over the majority of the Scythians' arable and grazing lands, and by forming a defensive fortified line, while he could not fully take the territory until he got the Scythians to come to a pitched battle, the Scythians also could not dislodge him from their lands. This is a very long-winded way of saying that while nomadic horse archers are very strong historically, they're not invincible, and a cunning opponent with knowledge of their tactics can very easily neutralize them. Remember, most opponents historically lost to the Scythians, the Huns, and the Mongols due to a lack of knowledge against that type of warfare, not due to incompetence or stupidity, though I'm sure there was examples of those. Are you enjoying the video? By all means, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next down below. I love getting feedback on these videos, and I would love to hear from you guys. Before we can talk about our tactics, however, we'll need to talk about how our warriors are armed and armored. As usual, I'll discuss the in-game armament versus the real-life armaments they would have used. In the game, our horse archers will be equipped with bows, swords, some leather armor, and war beasts, 6 is equivalent of horses if you don't know, and I trained them to be about 70-30 in terms of archery training to melee training. As while the Talapi get more from archery, we do need to have some melee ability for when we run out of arrows, and yes, this does happen. In real life, Scythian horse archers would have used a scale mail made of bronze or iron plates sewn into leather for richer warriors. Poorer warriors, of course, would only use leather, or even boiled rawhide. The scale mail and the light leather armor would not inhibit the movement of the wearer as much as other armors at the time, such as the Greek lymphothorax, allowing them to still retain their mobility in order to use their bows. Alongside their bows, they wielded the asanasis, a straight iron sword that was of Scythian origin, but then spread around the Persian world and then was used as the word for everything from daggers to swords by the Greeks. It's all exonyms, it's just what Herodotus does, I hate him for it. Scythia is unique to our little 6 series here, however, as it's the one culture I will be exploring that was also gender neutral when it came to warfare. Both the men and the women would fight as horse archers when the Scythians went to war. And this led to the invention of the Amazonian warrior myth that the Greeks loved to perpetuate, with many Scythian women burials being found with similar war injuries and armor sets to men. Even funnier is that Talapi are all considered to be female in Songs of Six, so we're both perpetuating and disproving the myth here today. Tactically speaking, we'll be making excessive use of the Parthian shot, which is a certain arrow technique that was used to take advantage of the composite bow's shorter profile, allowing the warrior to loose arrows over the back of their horse as they moved away from the targets. This will be in combination with skirmishing tactics and feigned retreats. Now, I don't think the game actually implements the Parthian shot, so we have to kind of get away far enough, but still within range of the bow, and it's a lot of micro in-game. In real life, this meant they could easily advance to a target, loose arrows, then retreat before foot-based archers could send any response. This would also let them goad enemies into charging as they run to a more advantageous position or to the reach of allied forces. Our first campaign is a tough one to watch, I'll admit, with multiple reloads, as similar to the Goths in 370 CE, I'm completely unfamiliar with horse archer tactics in Sons of Six. And despite being warned by the official Discord that it would be a very micro-heavy experience, I dove in full tilt without any support assets for my horse archers. This resulted in me in having one unit of horse archers against quite a few hoplites, and we ran out of arrows. It's around this time that I lock in though, and I remember my childhood days spent cycle charging in Rome to the war, and I commenced the cycle. We charge and charge until eventually the enemy morale shatters just before our own does, and they flee the battlefield finally. This battle was exhausting for me, but it was truly the start of the campaign, as it allowed me to start conscription, making it much easier to raise troops as needed instead of having to use my own population, which has caused issues in the Sparta and Roman campaigns. Our war machine is now ready to advance upon the steppes and to claim our birthright. My armies sprint forth across the region, conquering all in their way, and if you thought the Spartans or Romans were overpowered, then you are not prepared for just how easy horse archers make this game. Fun fact, this entire video takes place in a 34-year span. I had to actually play after the recordings in order to get a lot of the time-lapse stuff. This can be immediately seen as it turns out that absolutely nobody wants to actually fight us on an open field.
Only a fool would meet the
Scythians
in an open field.
And the majority of our early battles are just us besieging small villages and towns that have nothing more than palisades. Hardly a fair nor entertaining fight for our brave warriors. Our first real test comes at the Battle of the Platte versus the Cimmerians, who historically the Scythians actually routed out of the steppe and took over from them. It's actually really interesting if you look into it. I love early antiquity, family feuds, it's great. We're able to use our arrows to easily break their ranks, then charge any stragglers who dare to still defy us. This is the way it'll be for most of our battles moving forward as well. Just skirmish till they break their lines and then charge to mop up the rest. I'll still play the montage, of course, but don't expect any level of tactical acumen or genius. Horse archers are devastatingly broken, both historically and in-game. It's a skew build if you think about it in RTS terms. As our army grows with each new conquest, we also take the time to administer the empire we've built, and I start to expand into more territories. We started with conquering the surrounding territories that we hadn't yet taken, and while these fights were super easy, it gave me a great chance to really practice using horse archers. As the various tribes around us fell to our arrows and the thundering of our hooves, I realized that our ally to the east, Hoogland, was unfortunately wiped out by a local marauding bandits that I might have forgotten to pay. Honestly, allegedly, we don't know. It could have been my fault. We'll never know. They're dead now, right? We can't tell. Who's to say? And this gives us a great opportunity to take over their lands and incorporate their people into our burgeoning empire. This leads to a snowball effect of conquer, conscript, arm, conquer, and as we spread across the Pontic steppe, within 30 years, I've already fully conquered the areas I set out to at the start of the campaign. I deliberated attacking south into Greece, which the Scythians did do at times historically, or going east across the Caucasus into Persia, which the Scythians did do until they got pushed out of the Medes area. Unfortunately, I don't think either would be particularly fun, as that involves slogs against multi-thousand soldier armies, which we'll run out of arrows before we run out of men. So, much entertainment as I think that would be, we're actually going to pause the conquest here, and we're going to talk about what do we do after we win the campaign. Because after all, this video is only 10 minutes right now? We gotta pad out that time, guys. Our wars are done, our empire secured, and it's time for us to think about the afterlife our warriors will face. Scythians traditionally buried their dead in burial mounds known as kurgans. These were remarkably common across steppe cultures of early antiquity, and there have been some theories that kurgans date back all the way back to the original Proto-Indo-European speaking cultures. In-game, this means actually researching the tombs technology for once in my life, and building a crypt. I tried to design it to be perfectly circular in order to mimic the nature of a burial mound, along with multiple graves and statues to represent burial goods the Scythians were known for, and this was very expensive on cut stone and gems, so I don't want to hear any belly aching in the comments about me cheaping out here. I do some decorating around the sides as well. I just think it's neat, and I want to get more into aesthetic building in this game. As you'll see in the time lapse, I did accidentally let the town motifs and style slip as I very rapidly expanded the town to accommodate the city's growth. If our Victoria is dead, suitably honored, I believe it's time we end our tale here. Please do leave a comment if you enjoyed this video, as well as liking and subscribing if you want more videos like this. We only have 3 races left to do in Songs of Six before this series comes to a close, so by all means let me know which one you want to see next. I'll probably have another poll up on YouTube post section, like I did with these guys. Right now, the decision will be between the Crotonians and the Dondorians. Do let me know. I won't spoil which nation or which culture they'll be historically, but regardless, have a wonderful day, morning, or evening, and I will see you in the next time. Bye-bye.